they'll be able to see it right as they're applying for each institution.
Right. And so the hard part really is researching before about the CSU system, doing all that hard work in your classes, but the application system, you made it very streamlined. You just need to just double check to make sure they filled out everything correctly.
Yeah, and if students are ever wondering what they need in order to be admissible to each program or institution, all 23 campuses have amazing websites, and they usually have a section for future students where they'll be able to look at each program in detail and see what admissions requirements are for each program to make sure that they're prepared academically, mentally, and prepared holistically to apply and be admissible to that program.
Yeah, and then at calstate.edu/apply, they could find out also a list of which campuses are impacted or what majors, and that gets updated every year. So they could look at that ahead of time. And some students may have some other questions, too, as they're filling it out, the CSU application. So if a student has a deficient grade, meaning of a D plus or lower, and they made it up during the summer or night school, should they report one or both of those grades? And does the system recalculate their GPA with both courses?
Great question. So if a student has made up a deficient grade and it was with the same exact class, right? So let's say they failed calculus the first time but passed it the second time, and they took that same exact calculus class. They do not have to put in that previous calculus class, just put in the higher grade. Now, if they did, let's say they took calculus honors for the first time, but then the second time they only took calculus without the honors, they would have to put both because those are not the exact same classes. And then our system will go ahead and go through and, one, give them credit for that A through G course, but also that because it's not the same exact course, it'll still affect their GPA coming in.
Okay, so if they take the exact same course, put the higher grade. If it's a little bit of a difference, even though it's similar curriculum, then they have to report everything on there. And then if a student was wondering, well, what is my CSU GPA if it's, calculated differently, where can they find a way on your website at calstate.edu to calculate that CSU GPA?
Yeah, so if they, we actually have a whole calculator for their entire eligibility index that includes helping them figure out what their GPA is. And if they go to calstate.edu/apply/eligibility-index, that'll take them to the eligibility index calculator page, which will also have a link to the GPA calculator as well. And then from there, students can also see the eligibility index table to help figure out what test score they should aim for, or whether or not what the eligibility index is to see whether or not they're admissible for each campus or not.
Great. So if they're a 10th grader, they can go and look into the system and say, oh, I'm doing good, or, oh, I need to do better my junior year. So it also could be used as a guide to help motivate people so they can become CSU eligible. And also a lot of students and families are not aware of all the 23 campuses. So what's the best way for them to research them and investigate them?
The calstate.edu is an amazing website that has basically almost everything that a student would need to learn about the CSUs. They have a section called Explore CSUs, and from there students can actually visually see on a map where each and every 23 CSUs are, and they can click on that. They can even filter it out, so depending on what size of a CSU that they would like, the types of resources they have, the types of student populations they serve on that CSU campus, and things like that, to really filter out and find the right fit CSU for them. And then they can go and learn more information from there. They'll have links to each CSU as well as like some quick facts right on the CSU website.
Yeah, and one of the things is that's great, too, with Instagram and Twitter, pretty much all the CSU campuses, if you just put Cal State or CSU or the name of your campus, you have so much information so students can learn about clubs or opportunities. Like a lot of people don't realize what a strong study abroad program San Francisco State University has, for not only just for a semester or for a year in so many countries. I mean, I think you're one of the largest ones, not just in the CSU systems, but nationwide as well, too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, our CSUs have really fire Twitters and Instagrams, and they all take great photos, and they're continuously updating everything. I believe Cal State LA just tweeted out about bioscience entrepreneurs, if anyone is interested about that. There's also a CSU Twitter, which will constantly retweet and talk about and share anything that the other 23 CSUs are, the amazing things that they're all doing. So if students follow at Cal State on Twitter, they'll be able to connect with a whole bunch of other CSUs through there as well.
Great. And other questions students have, because there's so much information outside about the college process. So no student or family should feel like, oh my God, I should know this. It's like, it's always complicated, always changing. So another question that comes out is, if I'm applying to a CSU, does taking either the SAT or ACT matter? And then when is the earliest or the latest test date that a CSU campus will accept?
If they're coming in for the fall, the latest test date would be the December test date for either of those.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, so they can still take the SAT or ACT. There's no preference on either or, and you guys do not require the essay section. And usually, if they take it during the beginning of the fall, like I tell a lot of students, like if you take that test, pretty much all colleges nationwide will accept it. If you kind of push the limit of November, December, check with each of the CSU campuses, right? Because your campus at San Francisco State will take a December test score, but another sister CSU campus may have different standards regarding about that. So October senior year would be the safest bet for all CSU, all colleges. But if you go later, check with each of your CSU campuses that you're applying to.
Yes.
Great. And then the CSU application, which is at calstate.edu/apply, the deadline is November 30th, and that's been a tradition for many decades. Are there any other deadlines for scholarships or other programs that students should be aware of?
Yes, definitely. So like I said, when students submit their Cal State Apply application, remember if they want, they can also apply for EOP through there. Okay? That's going to be something that they should be aware of. And also the FAFSA, so the Free Application for Federal Student Aid, as well as the California DREAM Act, opened October 1st, and the priority deadline is March 2nd. So students should apply and submit those applications before March 2nd, okay? Although that March 2nd deadline isn't a hard deadline, submitting either application for student aid after that deadline could result in receiving less federal and state financial aid. So just submit that before then to be safe.
Right. And then each CSU campus has their own scholarships, right? So if I'm applying for San Francisco State or Stanislaus, I want to check both of their applications on there. And then in case I'm applying to other colleges, since the financial aid forms are out October 1st of a student's senior year, just get it over with in October, and then you'll meet everyone's deadline. Like I usually tell students and families, get a treat versus a trick and submit all your financial aid forms by October 1st or by Halloween. And they can also submit their CSU application by then too, correct? Yes.
These deadlines, yes, those can be the last days that you can submit them, but it's always safer and so much better to submit them earlier than the actual deadlines themselves. So it's safer, and then you have the weight is lifted off your shoulders sooner.
Right. So November 30th is the CSU application deadline, but your application comes out October 1st. So if I'm a senior just considering a CSU, or if I'm a freshman too, one of the things is both of them don't know is the vast variety of majors like animation, interior design. I mean, you have some majors that even some other campuses across the nation don't offer. Are there any type of majors or programs that are unique that you want to highlight that some students should be aware of that a CSU campus could offer students?
Yeah, so I know that When I was attending CSUMB, we could make our own major if we wanted to. So if you are attending a CSU and you're like, these are all sound amazing, but I don't want to, there's something very specific that I want to study, going over and talking to the advising office there, they can actually help students figure out, okay, if you take these classes, you can actually major in this, which is a special major specifically only for you. And you can do that in a lot of the CSUs as well, which is, I think, is pretty unique to the CSUs. Like I said, my expertise is in San Francisco State. So we actually have the very first and only College of Ethnic Studies in the entire nation. So if any student wants to study Africana studies or Asian American studies or Chicano Latino studies, anything like that, we have a whole college specifically dedicated to supporting that program and those students, which is specifically unique to San Francisco State. But we also have Cal Maritime has very unique programs that students should definitely go into, and they actually make students, or they actually require students to go abroad for, I believe it's a semester or a year as part of their curriculum, which is also super unique, specifically to maritime. And there's a whole bunch of other ones that students, if they're interested in anything, however vague it is, if they just go to the calstate.edu website, put in something that they're interested in, they'll be able to find some sort of major or program at some CSU that would cater to that specific passion and interest of theirs.
Yeah, the key thing is follow your passion because, you're going to be working for a long time. Right? So if students are looking at the application, they always ask a question about what major. And I always tell students, well, undecided is the best major because you could discover so much that you may have never even heard of. But that may vary at certain campuses, right? So, as applying as undecided versus specific major, right? So some campuses like the Cal Polys, you have to select a major. There is not undecided. So how does that work in the CSU systems? Like if I'm undecided, is that more competitive or not? And do I have to if I put a major, do I have to get into my major in order to get into the CSU? And I know this varies for each of the CSU campuses, but what's a general statement from the Cal States about that?
So in general, depending on the program, if a program is impacted, that's going to affect the requirements for the student to be admissible to that program and that institution, right? So some programs or some institutions or if they're not impacted as an institution, it'll be easier to get in general. And if they want to apply to an impacted program within that institution, the case may be that they apply for that program, but they don't get into that program, and they'll be put into an alternate program instead within that institution, so they can, if they're still admissible, right? That's the way we do it here at San Francisco State. If a student is applying, especially as a transfer student, but they meet minimum requirements, but they don't get accepted into the program that they want to get into, they'll get put into an alternate program.
Okay, so alternate majors are available for students if they don't get into their main major. And if they're not considered for an alternate majors, you should contact each of the specific CSU campuses if that's a possibility.
Yeah, so that'll really depend on each institution, whether or not, like how impacted they are as at an institutional level as well as a department or program level as well per major.
Okay, fantastic. So that's one thing that's important to students to know and to fill out that alternative major. Because I know some students like, I only want this major, I only want a major, and they got accepted to a CSU campus, but as the alternative, like, okay, I'll do that alternative major. All right, I'll do that. So that's important. So if students want to learn more about CSUs, what are some social media outlets or other ways they can investigate about CSU campuses?
Yeah, so like I said, the CSU has a Twitter. If they follow them at Cal State, so CALSTATE, and they also have an Instagram, and their Instagram handle is the CSU, so THECSU. If they want to follow the CSU on Facebook or YouTube, it's just California State University. Starting with that, that'll give students a great overview of all 23 CSUs because they'll highlight each one like throughout their timelines and their feed. If you want to look at a specific CSU, even if you just